This year, I quit November. November is such a stressful month for me. Every idea that feels like such a great idea coming from somebody else feels like why didn't I think of that moment? November's like the month where just all of the doubts just kind of like pile up and start overwhelming and overflowing, and that like push through energy that I have through the year, it's like all gone by November. 10 years ago, November was the month that I decided it was time to step back from teaching. Without any specific reason, it's just a time of year with so much heaviness for me. November always feels like a mad dash to just gather all the pieces that have slipped through the cracks during the year. And on top of that, it's like dark and cold, and I am just so freaking tired. And what should be a rest up buttercup kind of month always turns into just like this panic. It's a spin, it's a spiral of like all the coulda, woulda, shouldas of the year, and feeling that I just better get it all together because January's coming, and you know, it's the best time to start. I love fresh starts. But this year, I kind of saw it all coming. So mid-October this year, I felt that familiar panic kind of creeping in, and instead of following my usual pattern, instead of, you know, tightening up, racing, and like getting ready to dive into something new, I just quit. I'm April Quast, the breath artist. I create energetic art and breathwork rituals that begin in the body and rise from the original spark inside of you. Do you know I have my master's in art education? And since leaving the classroom 10 years ago, I've collected so many, too many certifications just trying to justify my worth as a woman who doesn't have a job. Every time I had a new idea, I'd sign up for a new program, hoping that finally it would make something stick. I'm really great at new ideas. Not so great at letting them grow old and familiar and turn into something. So in October this year, before the Try Hard FOMO month of November arrived, I decided to get ahead of the whole thing and just quit. And I did, and it felt great. Because if I'm not trying to make art to sell or to make somebody else happy or make something somebody else will like, then I can make it because I want to and because I like it. And if I'm not trying to convince other people about how breathwork can change their lives, I can practice it and I can let it change mine. And if I'm not sitting at my desk staring at the screen trying to write copy and prove I'm worth it, buy my stuff, then suddenly I can do anything I want. I could build a gingerbread fireplace. And that's actually what I ended up doing after I quit and I had free time. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit more about my quitting experience while you watch me create a gingerbread fireplace. So come along with me. Why a gingerbread fireplace? Because why not? Everything I've been doing for years had reasons behind it. To get ready for an art show, to prepare for a workshop, launch an offer, try harder, do more. A gingerbread house decorated fireplace, it's pretty useless. And the result's probably going to be just but the process, that's going to be the fun part. And if it's not, I don't have to keep going. While I build this, I'm going to share 5 ways quitting shifted my world. Shift number 1 is that my choices became personal again. As I started drawing out my plans and laying everything out, I realized right away that I didn't feel like cutting this. I didn't feel like using power tools because I just don't like that part. But my husband, he loves that part. He lights up for anything involving a saw or a drill. It's funny, sometimes the things that we don't enjoy is the thing that somebody else genuinely loves. That one has the chimney, but if you don't want to do a chimney.
What do you mean has it? Oh.
Yeah, but you don't have to do a chimney if you don't want to. If you want to just cut it off, we can just, I don't have to worry about chimney. He likes to cut things, so a chimney was no problem to him. This is where a dangerous comparison brews when we try to keep up with the things that aren't really meant for us. So instead of forcing myself to do the thing I hate, I let him do the thing he loves. And that meant I didn't have to. It was really such a small moment, but it reminded me how many choices I make because I think I should, or because I'm trying to match some imaginary standard in my head. Quitting pulled me out of that. When you quit, your choices stop belonging to the audience you made up in your mind, and they become personal again. It's not what should I do, but what do I want? Shift number 1 was really about making my choices become personal again, having them be about what I want and not what I should do. The number 2 thing that shifted in my life after I quit was my body finally got to speak. I could actually hear it. October was a crash. It was a full stop. My whole body just was like, nope. It wasn't the kind of tired you push through. It was like that full body, just not gonna happen. That kind of tired that sends you to the couch in the middle of the day, and the kind that where your bones feel heavy and your thoughts feel fuzzy. I think I actually took a nap during the day one of those days. And then November arrived, and this is the month that usually just completely takes me out. And suddenly I had energy. Nothing crazy, but a steady, clear, grounded kind of energy I really haven't felt in November in years. There was this surprising, unfamiliar kind of clarity. And it wasn't because I rested better or planned better. It was because quitting finally quieted the noise long enough for my body to have a say. Without the pressure, I could actually feel the difference between a yes and a no. A yes felt like a load lifted off my shoulders. A no felt like a tightening in my chest. It's wild how loud the body gets when urgency loosens its grip. How you can start hearing things you didn't even know were speaking. My body wasn't asking me to push or prepare or keep up. It was asking for space to be heard, space to feel, space to reboot, and somehow November listened. Shift number 2 that came from quitting was that I finally could hear what my body had to say to me. The third way that my world really shifted from quitting was that urgency stopped running my life. I stopped making decisions because I felt like I was running out of time, and I started to give myself space and time. Can we just stop and acknowledge how the camera shifted focus for the cuter part of this project? Lilo loved that I quit because there was a lot of moments that I could just sit and be with her and with the moment. Okay, back on topic. Urgency stopped running my life. So in November, I went to my 25th high school reunion. Well, technically my husband's, but all of our friends were in the same class. So usually a reunion is where you list what you've accomplished. You are comparing where life has brought you and where you've been. But since I quit, I really had nothing to report. And strangely, that was something that felt so good. Quitting shined a light on the fact that through all my striving, I rarely listened. I was too busy preparing my next move or what I could say next that I was never really there listening to what was happening and listening to who was there with me. But that night, I really had nowhere to go and nothing to reach for. I just had presence. And quitting reminded me that giving feels better than receiving, but letting others give means that you've got to be willing to receive. And so listening was a big part of that. Later in the month, I went to a women's circle I'm part of, and normally I'd arrive the same way with an agenda, something to share, something to offer, something to prove. But after quitting, all I brought with me was presence, and I listened to their stories and shared a little bit of mine. And everyone, including myself, held space for my story, for their stories. It looks like frosting. Quitting really made me realize how much urgency was running my entire nervous system. Every new idea felt like something I needed to hurry up and act on. And November is urgency month. Only 2 more hours before this deal's gone forever. If you're ever going to do this thing, do it now, because next year it's going to cost you double. There are only 2 left in stock. Like now. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And I was used to my entire nervous system feeling like November. And it was like, if you don't act on this idea now, it's going to be too late and no one will care. But quitting removed that reaction. Quitting removed timelines. Quitting removed the urgency. So shift number 3 reminded me that I am on time for my frequency, and urgency doesn't have to run the show. I really like shift number 4. Shift number 4 was about not asking what should I do, because when you quit, that is oftentimes a first question, but it was about starting to ask, what do I want to feel? And since October felt like everything was crashing down, I made sure to book appointments in November that would lift me up. And so I booked a session with my dear friend and emotion code practitioner, Rebecca, in anticipation of really needing it by the time November rolled around. And normally when I'm in that session, I come to her with a list of the things I need to fix, the things I want to work on, the things I want to accomplish. But since I quit, my energy felt really good and I had no agenda. I told her, honestly, I have no idea what I want to work on. And so we spent most of the session exploring curiously. And then about 10 minutes before the end of it, it surfaced. I had never processed the first time I quit. Leaving my job as a teacher 10 years ago, I never recovered from that burnout. I went straight from one job into trying to create another one. Collecting certifications, new careers, new identities, all because I was really too embarrassed to just say, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I felt guilty staying at home, creating, making things, doing things I love when other moms were working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So I filled my space with striving. If I was trying, if I was building something, then maybe I was allowed to feel worthy. Quitting in November finally gave space for clarity to come through. When everything wasn't driven by what should I do, I was finally able to ask, what do I want to feel? And my feelings were able to start driving the actions and be the thing that really led the way. Okay, shift number 5 of how my world really shifted after quitting is that rest returned to my timing and there was no rush. Rest gave me room for perspective and to slow down and just go with the flow. So back in October, when I booked my emotion code meeting, I also booked a astrology reading. I want to make sure I covered all the bases to prepare for my pending doom month. I'm new to astrology and I don't know much about it, but I love personality tests. I'm an INFJ And I love to collect those aha moments that I can look at and be like, yep, that is so me. My astrology reading delivered a message that really felt like mine. I learned that I love to learn about the world through symbolism. My impact lives in motivating fresh starts, in inspiring action, in creating nurturing space for people to validate what they already know is in them. Like, I know this, and it felt so good to hear it because I felt like it was true. This was something I didn't have to try to be because I really knew that this is what I already am. Quitting let me receive perspective without agenda. I didn't have to take this information and push or plan or justify an action. I got to notice the truths and just be with these truths. I really gave myself so much space for rest and flow this month. This allowed ideas and truths like these to pass through without needing to make something come of it. Truths could really just be noticed. This November was just so different. I rested, I ate, I created, I strolled, I decluttered, I shedded the old, I played, I worked on gingerbread decorations and glittery accents around the house, and I went with the flow of whatever November brought me. New business ideas and potential opportunities did show up, and waves of FOMO and doubt did too. But this time I didn't doubt myself and compare myself to everyone else who seems to have it all together. This time, quitting made me finally realize the biggest thing of all. Rest is productive and there's no rush. Like I said earlier, my nervous system has lived on urgency for as long as I can remember. And quitting gave it enough silence to start learning to pause and listen. Every great idea still sends that surge through my body, that let's start right now feeling, but good ideas will wait. Opportunities will flow, and I have to remember I have plenty of time. And quitting ended up being the thing that actually moved me forward. It's interesting the reactions I got when I told people I quit. The word quit hits people really in a specific way. It's sharp, it's final, and it makes people kind of flinch a little. If I had said I'm taking a break, everyone probably would have nodded politely. Taking a break feels acceptable. Breaks are gentle and temporary, and breaks are for the tired. But in today's productivity-obsessed world, at least they're still considered respectable. But quitting is taboo. Quitting makes people say, wait, how could you? As if opting out is more dangerous than burning out. And maybe that's why I needed to use the word, because I needed a word that didn't promise I would come back better or stronger or even return to the same thing I was doing before. That's the thing about taking a break. A break assumes you're going to return with a plan. It assumes you're preparing to re-enter the world responsibly and that there's something waiting for you when you get back. But quitting cuts the cord. I noticed that so much of my drive was really fear-based anyway. When there was even the tiniest thread that held on to what was, I couldn't really let go and flow. I was afraid of being last. I was afraid that what I did wouldn't be received or relevant. And I didn't want to miss out on what could be my big break. I wasn't moving forward with intuition, trust, and flow. I was grasping. Quitting says I don't owe anything to this version of me. Quitting means if I come back, I come back. If I don't, I don't. There's no obligation to continue where I left off. I'm allowed to start new. And honestly, that was the freedom I needed most. Quitting was such a huge freedom because while I was resting, I didn't have to think about the consequences. I didn't want to think about the pieces I'd have to pick up later. I didn't want to strategize my next move from the couch. I just wanted to sit there. I wanted to stop, not pause. I wanted the full out stop. Quitting was the only word big enough to let me do that. I don't have to go back. I don't have to do it. Quitting meant there was no consequence for what I didn't do. And when you take away the consequences, the urgency falls away too. And when urgency falls away, the fear also falls away. And what's left is the truth. My body's truth, my timing's truth. And once I could finally hear that I had nothing to rush back to, it started flowing towards me again. That was the surprise of quitting, the recognition that I had built my whole world around momentum. And I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to move from flow. Quitting didn't solve anything. I wasn't trying to solve anything. It didn't answer every question or clarify every next step, but it did something more important. It gave me back the ability to be honest with myself. I could look at what was draining me and be vulnerably honest about also what delights me. And maybe that's the real reason I wanted to record this, and the real reason I invited you into my studio. I built something as silly as a gingerbread fireplace, because quitting gave me a little more access to myself, especially my intuition. And the part of me that creates for the sake of creating, rests for the sake of resting, and doesn't need a reason for any of it, that's the part of me I wanted to share with you, and that's the part of me I want to live in for a while. So if anything in my November has stayed with you, let it be this. Quitting has been glorious. I found so much lightness, clarity, and so much peace. And if you're still here, thank you. It probably took me about 5 hours to make these gingerbread houses. Luckily, when you quit, you become a lot less greedy about how you spend your time. And it's funny, when art ends up in museums or above fireplaces, we start to think about art as a product. But art isn't just a product. It's a process. It's an experience. It's a journey that doesn't have to lead anywhere for it to matter. Sometimes it takes quitting to enjoy an adventurous journey that's not destination driven. I'm glad you've been here with me for this. May you find your own version of quitting, and just enough so that you can hear yourself again and enjoy the journey.